MXGP, the podcast.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of MXGP, the podcast, with me, Paul Malin, and my co-host, as always, Jason Thomas from Fly Racing, where on this week's episode, we're going to be getting into what happened at the last two rounds of the championship, where we visited Uddevalla in Sweden, and, of course, Arnhem, the most recent round in the MXGP of the Netherlands. Now, if you weren't with us on any of those, or you've only seen the highlights of those events, of course, in Sweden, in MX2, Sasha Kunin, Liam Everts, and Camden McClellan, they were on the podium. But, of course, all the news that weekend was Guillaume Ferrez and his crash in the qualifying race. And in the Netherlands, in MX2, Camden McClellan, Liam Everts, and Ferrez, after everything that happened a week before, found himself third overall in the Grand Prix. In MXGP, well, who else but Jeffrey Hurlings? He seems to be doing all of the winning at the moment. But Hurlings, Fevre, Vial, that was how it finished in Uddevalla, with Paul Jonas finishing in fourth after a great second position in the first race. And just recently at Arnhem, it was a Dutch 1-2. And what fantastic racing we had just this past weekend. Hurlings, De Wolf, Vial, they were your top three. Tim Geiser, almost on the podium, but had to settle for fourth place. And making a welcome return for his one-off only deal, his final ever MXGP race at home, Glenn Coldenhoff, who normally races in Brazil. Before we start the podcast, I just want to say a big thank you, as always, for FMF for their continued support of this MXGP, the podcast. Guys, it's very much appreciated. So thanks to everyone involved for making that happen. And, of course, for your continued support in the EMX 125 European Championship, which, of course, is presented by FMF Racing. So, thanks massively for that. Well, let's bring in Jason Thomas then, Fly Racing. JT, good to see you. We've had a couple of busy weeks. You've had a couple of busy weeks. And, of course, in Pro Motocross, you've got two fantastic battles, just one round to go at Ironman. Cole Davies is back in red. He's got a 14-point lead over Levi Kitchen. Let's discuss that one first of all. Wasn't an easy round last weekend, was it, at Budds Creek? A little bit wet.
No, it wasn't. I've been getting whiplash trying to keep up with, four championship fights, especially when they're on the same weekend. But, as for Budds Creek, we had potential for it to be, pretty ugly on Saturday. The rain that came down was pretty substantial during qualifying. And even, honestly, Thursday night and Friday night, we had pretty heavy rain. So the track crew did a great job of giving us a quality racetrack for at least 3 out of the 4 motos anyway. But yeah, typical, heat and humidity was present by Saturday afternoon. But overall, for what could have been a disastrous weekend, and we have not had a real mud race in pro motocross in quite a while, we were able to avoid it again and get in some good racing.
And obviously in 450 class, it could not be tighter, of course. The brothers Lawrence, Hunter in red, Jet just 1 point behind. Obviously, it's been quite crazy between those two over the last couple of rounds. And just to inform everybody, that the last time we did this was after the MXGP of Flanders at Lommel in Belgium. So a couple of weeks ago, maybe 3-4 weeks ago now. So we've not really touched base with any of that. But yeah, at was it Unadilla, where there was that massive point swing between Hunter and Jet, where Jet took over the championship lead. And then, between the two races on the weekend, Hunter seems to have managed to claw back and just hold on to that red plate for now, as we said, with Ironman still to come.
Yeah, both championships really have, they felt like they were very similar as far as like how the points looked. I always felt like they were very different in reality, just the dynamics that were going into them. And if, you don't follow pro motocross, maybe just hopped on and said, hey, what's happening within these championships, or a casual fan, you would think that, oh, wow, a couple points between each championships. This has been a fight all the way. But it really hasn't been. And over the last week or two, especially Budds Creek, that separation of what I was talking about as I think come into play, where I feel like Cole Davies has had the upper hand consistently for quite a while, but that Spring Creek round loomed very large. Only scoring a handful of points really changed what the point situation looked like, even though when everything was neutral, he seemed like he was in firm control of the series on a racing basis. And now I think you're starting to see him extend that because things have been a bit static recently. He hasn't had the issues. He hasn't had any mechanical failures. And you're just seeing his starts putting him into good position and then good results stemming from that time after time, and the point separations coming accordingly. That doesn't mean that Levi Kitchen's riding poorly, but again, the starts in the first lap positioning for Levi Kitchen it's killing him, for lack of a better term. He simply cannot be expected to overcome starting outside the top 10 week after week after week when your championship rival is starting within the top 3, if not first, time after time after time. That's too much to overcome, right?
Yeah.
If you're an all-timer, if you're Jeffrey Hurlings, if you're Tony Cairoli in his prime, if you're Ricky Carmichael, sure, you can overcome that. You really can. But just your average run-of-the-mill champion on a year-to-year basis, it's too much to ask. You're going to, over time, run into situations where you're just not having your best day and you're going to give up points. I would even go so far as to say, look at Jet Lawrence on a weekend like last weekend. He's one of the best 450 racers on the planet, right? It's really hard to discount what Jeffrey Hurlings is doing, but no doubt Jet is in that conversation. He couldn't overcome poor starts at Budds Creek, right? He got back into the fight, but it wasn't enough to get him to where he needed to be. And he was penalized by losing, 11 points back to his big brother because his first lap positioning wasn't good enough. It wasn't the riding. His pace was fine, but you cannot consistently put yourself behind the proverbial 8 ball and expect to win these races. Not when you have quality competition at the very front. So the championships, there's a lot to say that one dynamic is completely determining the outcome of a championship is probably foolhardy because we all know racing, there's a lot that goes on. But you could go back to the starts and the positioning and say they are wildly important in both 250 and 450. And if Hunter pulls this off, you could look back to his starts over the last 3 rounds and say that they've played a huge role.
Who's your money on? I mean, I guess it's 50-50 with those two, isn't it? Hunter's obviously been fantastic out of the starts. Jet's been playing catch up. In terms of composure, who do you say is in the driving seat? In terms of raw speed and pace, where do you sort of see, who's the one that has that kind of the better speed between the two?
It's an interesting question. It's one I've thought about a lot about the last few days. In this situation where all the pressure is on and the lights are the brightest, whatever cliche you want to throw at it, Jet has proven that he can come through in this spot time and time again. This is the moments that he seems to shine. And I was told this early on in his career that this kid, I always think there's 2 different ways you can look at pressure. And I'll credit Grant Langston for saying this. He didn't make it up, but he's the first person I heard say it. Is pressure does one of 2 things to people in these championship fights. It either summons your focus, it hardens your resolve, and you bring your best stuff in that given time frame. It really brings the best from you. Or you simply cannot handle the pressure and it distracts you. You think too much, you get inside your own head, and it deters you from bringing your best stuff. Jet Lawrence, time and time again, it seems to bring out the best in him. So I love that dynamic for Jet on the weekend. The issue is, and it's kind of an underreported issue to this point, that 1 point looms large, right? Because Hunter doesn't have to beat Jet on the day, right? He just needs to hold serve. He just needs to keep the status quo. If he wins, if Hunter can find a way to win that first moto, it really puts Jet in a bind because then Hunter can just manage the situation in the second moto. And I know racing is not simply managing things that, their starts and guys like Jorge Prado and Hayden Deegan and people that have a say in these things. But I really do believe that 1 point differential is a huge deal because it forces Jet to basically I have to go a 1-1 on the day. If he goes 1-1, nobody can do anything about it. But it really forces his hand where Hunter has a little bit more leeway, right? He can be a little bit more situational about what's coming at him than Jet can.
Yeah, and that's the big thing, isn't it? A 1-2-2-1 is not enough. 1-1 is the only thing for Jet. And obviously, he's had to dig deep in the past and he's probably going to go there and dig deep. I guess the fans, what they want is both brothers and maybe Hayden and maybe even Jorge Prado just to be in the mix from the very start of the race, in those first 4 positions. Doesn't really matter which 4 positions, but, sort of almost in that position where they can challenge Jet, they can challenge Hunter, the other 2 riders, and really make a fist of it to sort of the point where the pressure is really on, But if they're there first and second in any order, and then there's a gap between those 2 riders, especially if it's Jet up front, then it's almost it becomes almost if you're a neutral or just a general fan, it almost becomes an anticlimax if Jet just goes 1-1 going away from everybody, especially in the second race. But you can't rule out that the fact that this year it's definitely been on a knife's edge at times. Certainly the brothers have kind of been the ones in the mix and they're the ones fighting for the championship. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Of course, how it plays out. Obviously, for Cole Davies, he's got more of a cushion, 14 points. So there's a potential he could wrap it up in the first race, depending on what happens. But the likelihood is it's very unlikely, because there are a lot more riders, and the 250 riders have been a lot more inconsistent, haven't they, in that 250 title chase?
Yeah, something would have to happen to Levi Kitchen, in a bad way for him to be eliminated after the first moto. He's proven too many times that he can overcome bad starts, overcome adversity, and get back into a reasonable position. So I don't expect that to happen. If I was forced to choose, I would just say that, it's going to be similar to the other weekends where Cole Davies gets a good start. He's in good position, and then he can just take it as it comes. Certainly there's going to be some nervousness. I don't think you're going to see him ride carefree and just go out and dominate the day, because there's going to be too many thoughts in his head. He's going to be thinking about the what if. He's not going to want to override the situation. And it's really hard to just be your best self in that mindset, right? Because one critical mistake could cost you a championship. So it's always going to bring a little bit of hesitation in your riding. You're just not going to attack the way you would, but he doesn't need to. I would say that's fine. Get the starts. That's what you've been doing. And then you can just allow things to happen. Your pace, even if you're not pushing that hard, is going to be good enough to keep you near the front. And we got to remember, a lot of these guys, it's unfortunate to say, but the final pro motocross round of the year, a lot of guys are going through the motions, right? Like, not the guys at the very front, but a lot of the pack are just trying to get through the thing healthy and then reset for the playoffs. So that adds to Cole Davies' ability to stay near the front, right? It's just going to make things a little bit easier. If it was the first round, everybody's full send. There's nobody letting off at any time, any way, no how. The final round, you can kind of watch in the waning laps of motos, and guys they're just mailing it in. They're just trying to get through the thing. So that helps Cole a little bit. But I did have a question before we get away from pro motocross a little bit. I did have a question for you. You've been watching, Hunter and Jet as well, for a long time, right? Go back to 2016, 17, when Hunter was, if you look at the championship standings, 7th, 8th place guy. He did have better results than that at times, but on a championship level, that's kind of where he was.
Yeah.
Could you ever imagine a place where he is the guy he is now, right? Like, he dominates Motocross of Nations last year, almost wins a 450 Monster Energy Supercross championship, is on the precipice of winning Pro Motocross championship here. I say that because I did not. If you told me that then, even if you told me that in 2020, I would have laughed you off of this podcast, yet here we are.
It's a strange one, really, because everybody evolves, right, as a rider. You look at where Guillaume Ferrez was when he was in Europe and then got the call up to go join Star, and then he ended up at Husqvarna. He obviously put himself in the shop window, but didn't really do anything. And now here he is leading MX2 in the World Championship on this side of the pond. When Hunter was riding in EMX and then in MX2, I always felt that from a rider's perspective, in terms of his style and the way that he rides a motorcycle, I thought he would go a long way. Mm-hmm. And obviously, when the family announced that they were all heading to the US for bigger and better things or whatever, we never got to see how far he could have gone in MX2 or MXGP, obviously. So in many respects, I'm not surprised. Just because of what I saw before he left, the way that he rode, he was very calculated, very measured, very cool, calm under pressure. And like I say, he's got a very natural riding style. In fact, they both have. But given where he was at a couple of years ago, he won his Supercross title, he's won his outdoor title, and then obviously it's been tough coming into into the 450 class. And so from that side, it could have gone either way, couldn't it? It's either going to continue that sort of spiral to the point where even Hunter himself was like, I wasn't even sure if I was going to carry on, and thinking about quitting because of one thing after another after another. But what we've seen with him, and this is a measure of his character, is when you're kind of up against adversity, one guy that you want in your corner is Hunter Lawrence. We've seen it time and time again. Look how he responded after losing the Supercross championship to Kenny. He's come out. Look how he responded after that mishap in Unadilla, where he, was way behind his brother in the points, and now he's leading again. He's every time he's been shot down, he's got straight back up. And if you're gonna, if you look at it like that, the way that he just go, it's almost, I say it sometimes in commentary, Control Alt Delete. He's not one to dwell on stuff. It happens, you regroup, you move on, and that's what we're seeing. And nothing is phasing him at the moment, not even his brother, who everybody keeps saying he's the best in the world, the fastest in the world, the most talented in the world in a generation. Well, Hunter's going up against him. Whether Jet's 100% or not is irrelevant. Jet is still in this championship fight. Hunter is in this fight. Nobody else is in it. And so, for him to have raised his game, to come in after what he did in Supercross, you got to take your hat off to him for putting himself in that position in the first place. Because, it's been incredible, his journey this year. Whether he wins or not is irrelevant. But the fact that he keeps coming back, no matter what, he gets knocked down, he gets back up. And that's a great trait to have as a rider. Not many have it.
Yeah. I think for me, it's just, I really thought it would kind of be more like an Aaron Plessinger type career, because usually when guys come up and they win the 250 championships, you can see it, right? Ryan Villapoto, there was no question whether or not he was going to be the real deal or not in the 450 class. But Hunter's rise has been so much more methodical and kind of slow paced, never stopping. It's nonetheless, it has been continual a rise. But 2022, you could kind of see he just didn't have what Christian Craig had in West Coast Supercross. He just could not match him. You saw in Pro Motocross, just Jet had the measure of him. Then that changes. Christian moves up. Jet moves up. And then 23, he's kind of the best of the pack, but it wasn't domination per se. He's battling guys like Nate Thrasher. Pro Motocross, he's battling Justin Cooper and Hayden Deegan late in the series. Like, he was the best of them, but it wasn't just this, oh yeah, there's no question, right? And he's just gotten better and better. And the level of competition has risen accordingly. And he has continued to get better than them. So for me, it's just one, it was a miss for me. I didn't see it coming. I thought it would be a solid career. He would be on a factory team, be a factory rider, make really good money, but not rise to where he might be the best rider in the world, where I felt leaving Ironman last October that he might be the best rider in the world right now. He proved on that weekend. And he has a chance to prove that, and again, I'll give my flowers to Jeffrey Hurlings. We're not going to see how that all plays out. But for what he's up against, man, I just cannot say enough good things about the continuous improvement that Hunter Lawrence has put in, because I don't think this was anything that was assured or a given. He's earned it at every turn.
Well, nothing ever is it? But it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out between those two, whether anybody else can sort of get in the way just to sort of upset the apple cart, if you like. And I think we're all going to be watching wherever we are in the world to sort of see how it does play out. Well, let's move on to MXGP then, and MX2, of course. It's been a couple of weeks. And again, just for transparency, we're recording this on Wednesday, as we usually do after a round. We've had Sweden in Uddevalla. We've had Arnhem in the Netherlands. One rider in MXGP has kind of been head and shoulders above everybody else. That's the championship leader, Jeffrey Hurlings. Before I get into Jeffrey Hurlings, it was only up until very recently that he'd sort of led or won more races than Lucas Coonan. He's got 16 race wins now. Lucas hasn't featured in the two races in Great Britain, in Czech Republic, in Lommel. He wasn't there in Sweden, obviously, and now here. And to say that he won those 13 races in all of that time, in those first few races up until South Africa, shows how good he was and how that he was taking this title chase all the way to Jeffrey Hurlings. So on one hand, we've got two arguments. We can say, yes, Jeffrey's running away with it and he deserves everything that is coming his way. But just spare a thought for Lucas Coonan, because he was right there where he needed to be. He had a 68-point lead heading into Great Britain. But that being said, you've got to be in it to win it. And since then, Jeffrey has been head and shoulders. He has won more races. What has he got? 10 race wins in a row now over the last 5 rounds, 8 podiums in a row, 7 of those as a winner, and 5 of those on the bounce as well. He was only second in South Africa. And so, you can't deny the facts. The facts are, he is, when everybody else is there, even without Lucas, he is the guy that has continually risen to the top this year. And so 143 points he is now, we'll get into that in a moment. But just in general, you can't take any away from him, the effort that he, Honda, and everybody else around him has been putting in this season.
You can only race who shows up on the weekend, right? Like Jeffrey doesn't have any say in what Lucas Kunin's health condition is, nor did Hunter Lawrence and Ken Roczen have any say in what Jet Lawrence's condition was in Monster Energy Supercross, right? You race who is there in the biggest series you compete in, and you go try to win, regardless of who's on the starting line. And for Jeffrey, it's no different. He was, just because Lucas was winning, I mean, we can go, you can go back and look. Jeffrey was there every time. And kudos to Lucas for besting him in a lot of those. But it was a dogfight every step of the way. And now, Jeffrey's kind of left alone. We'll get to Kai de Wolf and the rise of him, but the winning is continuing. Jeffrey's putting perfect weekends together, and it logically kind of, it adds up. When you take away his biggest competition, he should be dominating, and he is. And there's really no other way to put it other than this is just Renaissance Jeffrey Herlings. He is on form with the best we've ever seen him. If you want to go back to that 17, 18 timeframe, sure, I think it's comparable, but I think you'd be hard pressed to say Jeffrey's not as good. If you want to argue about better, that's okay, but not as good, I think would be a mistake, because look at what he's able to do. His starts are certainly better than they were then. Speed, I don't know how you can be better than fastest qualifier all the time and winning all the races all the time. And then fitness has never been an issue for Jeffrey Herling. So he has all of the metrics to go up against any version of himself. And at an advanced stage, going through all the injuries and all the laps he's put on himself, it's pretty remarkable. I think it is a season that we're going to look back on and say, wow, that was something we're going to remember for a long time. Even though we didn't know it in the moment, it's going to be one that people talk about for a long time.
Yeah, and when you think about race wins and things like that, obviously since Fox Hill, Great Britain, including that round, the last 5 rounds, he's gone 1-1. That's where his sort of 10 wins in a row have come from. But since Czech Republic, he's also been the fastest in free practice and time practice, and he's won the qualifying race at all of those rounds. So he's, not only been the fastest in the free and the time practice getting him the grid position choice for the qualifying races. When you look at the 8 races that he's won, Czech, to this point, and the 3 qualifying races as well, 4 qualifying races, it's 12 wins in a row just there. That's taken away, the 2 that he got on a Sunday in Fox Hill. But in Sweden, obviously you've been to Uddevalla in the past. It's hard, it's rocky, it's slick. And what's hard to believe is that going in to that weekend, he'd only ever won there twice, both of those in MX2. The last time was 2014. He'd not only not won a Grand Prix there in MXGP, he'd not even won a race there. And obviously he's been in MXGP since 2017. So what made that weekend all the more remarkable was that he was just dominant right the way from start to finish. Free, practice, time practice, quali, and then the races on Sunday, even in the warm-up.
Yeah, I think there, 2 things can be true here. Jeffrey is on, again, as I mentioned, the same or better, best form of his life. And also, I think, I don't want to be negative towards the other riders, but I don't think that Roman Febvre and Tim Geiser specifically are on their best form at the moment, right? And when you think about the racetrack in Sweden, it favors what they do really well. It is typically a racetrack where they're going to bring their best stuff. And without them on great form at the moment, for various reasons, age, it doesn't seem like Tim is fully gelled with the Yamaha yet, right? So whatever reasoning you want to add to it is fine, but it's hard to argue they're not their best self right now. That makes the job a little bit easier for Jeffrey. So I think both can be true. Jeffrey's on his best form, and who he has to beat is not quite as difficult as it was before. And I would, give you an example of Pauls Jonas being second in race 1. That should tell you all you need to know. If Pauls, who has been way up and down all over the place, is able to be second, that should tell you that the prototypical fight for the win is just not what it has been in recent years at a track like Uddevalla.
But were you impressed the way that he was just getting around and just making it look just so easy? Every lap. In fact, I think he led every lap there. He's led every lap pretty much, the last 5 races, with the exception of the weekend, of course. But he just, I don't know. Even after the race, he didn't look tired. And I think it's like to ride a hard pack track, right? People talk about how difficult it is to ride sand, how physical it is. But it can also be just as physically demanding to ride a hard pack track because you're fighting a lot more. The bumps, there's so much more unpredictability, at the front, at the back. You're fighting the front from a slide, from breaking away at any moment. You've got to have the control at the throttle. So you almost in a sense of sort of tension sometimes when you're riding if you're not in the groove. But he just looked like he was on a different racetrack that weekend.
Yeah, so two things. One, I think the Honda has incredible front end feel. So when you're on a hard pack track like that, it's going to give him more confidence to just find traction where others can't, right? And I think Honda has had that in their repertoire for quite a while. What I would give Honda a lot of credit for, and maybe it's the 27 model, maybe it's having, prototype parts they can put on it to alleviate this, is on a hard pack track. And I rode one a year ago, so I have a near frame of reference. The Honda's still a little twitchy, right? On a hard pack track with hard bumps, it's not as forgiving or doesn't provide as much comfort as some other chassis would. So Honda has clearly done a lot of work with Jeffrey to alleviate anything that he would be feeling where it's like, man, yes, I have positive traction on the front, but it's a little dicey in hard packed, hard bumps where, the prototypical Honda feel would come in, that twitch that you hear a lot of American riders talk about. So they've done a lot of great work there. But the second thing I would say to that is look at his starts. He's putting himself at the front every time. So that was a problem on the KTM. You could just go back and look in recent years. He would be I'm not saying he was 15th, but he would be 9th often. And then you're fighting through the pack. You're in traffic. If you're not quite feeling so good, it's just the mission just becomes a little bit more difficult. And when you start at the front and you're on the confidence level he's on right now, good luck overtaking him the way he's riding right now. So there's just a lot of momentum that, anybody right now would have a tough time derailing.
Yeah, and his first lap aggression is also on point, isn't it? When you look at Febvre finishing second overall, Vial third, they were the best of the rest in Sweden. But even in race 2, I think it was when Roman led, Jeffrey was second. There was one of those little tight right-handers. Roman was indecisive, went to the middle line, and Jeffrey was straight up the inside, and he was leading before the end of the lap. And from there, it was just kind of, see, you controlled the race. Another 1-1 in the books. And actually, I pulled this up in the commentary. Going into Sweden, he'd had 84 double race victories to win Grand Prix. Sweden was 85. I told him after the GP, just come out of the media center after the press conference, and I reminded him of that, and he went, "Is that a record?" And I said, "What do you think?" Stefan won 101 Grand Prix. 85 of them weren't 1-1, exactly. And Tony won 94. Yeah. 85 of those weren't 1-1. So I think you're safe in the knowledge that those 86 now after Arnhem, was sort of another record in the land of Jeffrey Hurlings.
It's funny, everybody's different in this aspect. What matters to you, right? Like some people are in it for, they just love the spirit of racing. Some people are, at that extended age or getting later in your career are the financial security of it is paramount. Cooper Webb is always thinking about how do I better secure my financial future? What decisions are going to allow that? Where I think Jeffrey, he's racing for legacy. He wants records. He wants to be, I think he's always, I don't know the right phrasing. It's not an insecurity thing. That's the wrong word. But he wants to be considered on the level or better than the riders you mentioned, Stefan and Tony and these legends of yesteryear. I think he is very aware that injuries precluded him from hitting the world championship numbers that those guys have. So he's looking for other ways to kind of equal that out some on a different metric.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about that in a moment because in terms of how many more titles, how many more GP victories, how many more race wins he could have had, of course, we never know. What we do know is he has missed 77 Grand Prix due to injury over his career. That's almost 4 years of competition. It might have been one GP one year, it might have been 3 the next, it might have been 12, it might have been a whole season, but you add them all up, you get the gist. 77 races, 77 rounds. That's a lot of racing to be missing. That's a lot of opportunity that has gone by the wayside if you wanted to be, the greatest ever. And whilst we're on it, he probably is, even if he finishes, let's say he finishes Turkey with a 6th world title, finishes this year with a 6th world title, never goes anywhere near another championship after that. The race wins, the podiums, the Grand Prix victories, All of that kind of stuff. He has far outpaced everybody else. The only thing that he wouldn't have won more than Stefan or Tony would be the World Championships. And so what determines the greatest of all time? Is it the Grand Prix? Is it the World Championships? Or is it everything else around that? Even though he may only finish with 5 because he's not won this one yet, even if he wins 6. I think more and more people are leaning towards him being the greatest of all time, no matter what.
Yeah, you're never going to convince certain people, right? You're never going to convince a Belgian fan that Everts is not the guy. You're never going to convince an Italian fan that Tony isn't the guy. So that's an impossible fight to win. It's great bench racing, but I just don't know. They're always going to push back with some metric to prove themselves right. And then it just becomes, argument about semantics, right? In the end, it's an opinion. I think what we can all agree on is that Jeffrey deserves to be in the conversation. You can't have that talk without putting Jeffrey's name into it. And I think that's enough, because I'll come back to the first point. You're never going to win that argument. You're just not, right? If Jeffrey had the race wins he has plus 10 titles or more, sure. Then it becomes very simple. But the facts are he has not. And maybe he does. Maybe he wins 2 or 3 more titles. And then it becomes a very easy conversation to have. But I think right now, it's even if he stopped racing tomorrow, you would consider him one of the best to ever do it. And I don't know how much more you need than that, right? To leave a sport and say, that guy right there is one of the best that has ever done it. I don't know how much more you could possibly want than that.
Sure. Well, moving on to the Netherlands then, obviously, just before we started this podcast, we, just as we, check mics and things like that, your question to me, how's everything? How was Arnhem? And I went, great racing. And that is the biggest thing that I'm going to take away from Arnhem this year. In MXGP, Jeffrey Hurlings, Kai de Wolf, provided us with some of the best racing we've seen in a while, but certainly some of the best racing we've seen this year. It was, you can't take your eyes off of any of it stuff, wasn't it? From beginning to end. Maybe not the first race, because I think he walked away with it. But no, the first one, that was the one where Kai led for 11 laps and kept Jeffrey at bay. It was the qualifying race where Jeffrey walked off. But Kai also had he went down on the first turn, had to come from 32nd or 3rd, got back to 2nd. So I think then we knew we were going to be in for a treat if they both got out in front, which they did.
It was incredible. I think my biggest takeaway was that Kai de Wolf is coming quickly to be a real contender for this championship. Does he have some work to do on hard pack tracks? Sure. Okay. Does he need to work on the sustainability to stay in the fight? Because if you look at last season, missing a few rounds cost him a potential MX2 World Championship. This year, whether or not he would be in the fight is up for debate, but the injuries were prevalent again in 2026. So something has to change on that front as far as being there at every round. But on a speed-wise, on an ability-wise, on, proving the fact that he can be on pace or better than anybody in MXGP, I think we're there. Like, that was remarkable to see the pace he had. And it's not very often where you can see Jeffrey Hurlings kind of say, yeah, that guy, he's the real deal, right? Like, I was flat out, and I don't know how much more I had to give than what we were giving. That's not very common for Jeffrey to throw out there. You've seen it with Lucas Kunin. You've seen it with Tony Cairoli in the past. Even though there were some hard feelings there, you could tell that sentiment was there. And I think Kai de Wolf's entering that arena. I was blown away at how good Kai was. I expected that from Jeffrey. He's in Dutch sand, like, not shocking at all. But for Kai to be that good and that close to winning and beating Jeffrey on this level, I think it spoke volumes about what's to come from a really young Kai de Wolf.
Yeah, and he also tweaked a right thumb going into Sweden the week before, so he was riding with a thumb brace. And so, we know on this side of the pond how good he is in sand. We've seen it. He is Jeffrey's equal, and may even sort of outdo him at some point, in the sand. But as it is at the minute, when you look at Jeffrey's record at home, 17 Grand Prix victories now at home, on home soil in his career. I think he's only lost one, and that was Valkenswaard in 17 when he was around 5 or 6 in the championship when he started the year with a hand injury. But that was his first podium of the year in MXGP as well for him. But the pace, the thing that got me was the intensity between them at that pace, just to leave everybody else behind, certainly in that first race. The atmosphere was absolutely electric, and you were afraid to blink in case you missed it. It was something else. You couldn't take your eye off. There was a twitch here or a twitch there, a save here, a save there. The way they came through traffic, there were several times where Jeffrey sort of sat back and tried to have a go again. There were some lunges up the inside. It was breathtaking. It really was. And when he made his move, he came out of that left through that wave section and just closed him off at the end. And Kai couldn't sort of, double that. It was, I don't know. It was just one of the best races, two of the best races I've seen all season long. And I guess many people were split. The way that Jeffrey's riding, there's obviously got a lot of fans around the world. They wanted to see him win, but how many of those people had written off Kai in advance of this round, and how many of the Kai de Wolf fans or the neutrals were actually, we want to see a real battle between these two? And here's why: because Lommel, when Jeffrey was kind of pointing down and we weren't sure if it was a clutch or the engine, and he wasn't even being challenged that day. Yes, the circuit conditions weren't as deep as Lommel, and it wasn't as warm as Lommel, but the unknown, I guess, that everybody was kind of sort of unsure of was, what if he's pushed to the very limit? What if then there is a technical? And there almost was on the final lap of the first race, when he locked up.
Yep.
We weren't sure if that was just a terminal issue, but it turned out to be a stone in the rear brake that he had managed to dislodge. But to do all that work and then be 4 corners from the line and then have that happen, my heart was in my chest, let alone, Jeffrey's. Like I said, it had everything, didn't it?
It did. And I think it's really just a little bit of a preview of what's to come, because if you think about the dynamic moving forward, I think as every day passes, it's going to be more and more difficult. And it's not going to be drastic, but it's going to be more difficult for Jeffrey to stay on this level as he continues to age. And Kai is on the other side of that curve where he's going to just get better, right? And that, wherever you think that peak age is, a lot of people say, 26, 27, 28, where your body and mind have come together and they are working flawlessly together at their peak form. Well, Jeffrey's on the backside of that and Kai's on the front side of that. So the odds of them, of more of this and Kai being more capable are good. Like, I think we're going to get more races like this. And it might be track dependent. I don't think Kai is, I know he's not quite this competent on every surface yet. We'll see if that improves, because look at Jeffrey. He's sorted it out too. Like, he has figured out how to be incredibly proficient on hardpack, and he's winning all the same. Maybe the gaps are not as big, but winning all the same. I have so many great things to say about Kai de Wolf, and I knew he would be good. I wasn't sure in year one if he would be this good. This good in the sand. Like, sure, I would guarantee you that there are Dutch fans going, of course, what do you mean? That's a big bridge to cross, to go put, nearly a minute into the field, right? And go battle Jeffrey Hurlings for 35 minutes. That's a lot to ask of anybody. He's not battling, 19-year-old kids with no experience. He's battling Roman Febvre and Tim Geiser and Tim Vial, who we'll get to, who had a fantastic weekend. He's battling several former world champions to put a minute into them. Like that's saying something.
The only thing that would have made it even more interesting and when you cast your mind back to Andalusia round 2, how good Lucas Koenen was in the sand that day. Riola, when Lucas beat Jeffrey in the sand again, deep sand. We never got to see that in Lommel because Lucas was already injured at this point. But imagine how good it would have been to have had a 100% fit Lucas Koenen just challenging Jeffrey in Lommel. And then given what we've just seen now with Kai de Wolf doing what he did to Jeffrey in Arnhem, and you put Lucas Koenen in that mix, minds would have been blown the world over. It would have been something sensational.
I honestly don't know how long it would have been sustainable. Lucas and Kai don't care for each other at all. I don't think that's a big assumption to make. I don't know how long you could have taken all three of them going at it that way with the emotions involved before something happened. Somebody would have crashed. Somebody would have went over the limit, right? There was a limit and they were sitting on it for a long time. I just don't know how much adding a third rider would have been sustainable. I would have loved to see it. Listen, must see TV. David Luongo and MXGP-TV.com would probably have blown a server trying to manage all that. But again, it's great to think about. We're going to get it. I think at some point in a one-off race, a Motocross of Nations, somewhere we're going to get that fight. But yeah, what a thought to think about. And Jeff, we so quickly remove and thank you for bringing Lucas back into these conversations because he would have been in that fight. But yeah, hopefully one day down the line we'll get our chance to see it.
Well, like I say, it's only fair and right to include Lucas in all of this because of what he did, in the first few races of the year where, he ended up coming away from South Africa with a 68-point lead. And as we know, and as we'd said, that's still not a great lead to have. Even Jeffrey's 143-point lead isn't that big in the greater scheme of things. He's been there before, remember, and lost titles with similar advantages. Kai's second overall with his fourth podium in MXGP. But for Jeffrey, he equals the 61 Grand Prix victories that he got in MX2. He now has 61 in MXGP as well, so 122 Grand Prix victories. Took slightly longer, though, in MXGP. In MX2, I was doing the math, 2,332 days in MX2 from his first win to his last win. That's 6 years, 4 months, 18 days. In MXGP, and that was his 61, first of his 61st. In MXGP, by comparison, 61. So his first in MXGP up until his most recent, 3,396 days. So 9 years, 3 months, 17 days. 6 years, 4 months, 18 days. 9 years, 3 months, 17 days. And as we said before, he's missed 77 Grand Prix through injury. What could have been? What could have been? Could have been so many more.
Yeah, it's hard to, I wonder when everybody, humans in general, whatever your plot in life is, when you're laying in bed, trying to fall asleep, you think about certain things. What could I have done better if I'd made this decision, where would that have taken me in life? And for Jeffrey, I wonder which wins out of, man, I'm doing everything I could have ever accomplished versus your point of like, what could have been if I had stayed healthier? I would have just smashed every record book, every metric, everything there is, that's only for him to know.
And of course, we don't know if that would have been the case because you don't know if any of those other races, there could have been something else, go wrong. There's no guarantee that he could have won every single race, every round. Of course not. But there's a high chance, given his sort of history of being off the bike just as much as he's on the bike, that, something else could happen along the way. Hey,
we're not that far away from that conversation with Jet Lawrence right now. If you look at his 450 career, he's missed a lot of racing. His 250 career, he was healthy almost all the time. Good for him. But if you look at the course of his 450 career, he's missed a lot of racing so far. So it's the trajectory and the pattern between those two is not all that different at the moment.
Yeah. Obviously, Jeffrey, Kai, that was the podium. Tom Vial was third with a 4.3. Tim Geiser was on for third. He fell out of third in the final few laps of the second race, ended up fourth overall. Tom Vial, I thought, was outstanding, really. How much of that was a Chase Sexton effect? Because obviously he was there in MXGP at the weekend, his buddy and all the rest of it. Even came in for a spot of doing your job. He was trying to take over your job, JT, for a little bit alongside me in the booth. How do you think that went for him?
No, it's great. I'm a big Chase Sexton fan, and his resume, I have nothing to offer comparatively on a resume. Thankfully, he's going to be busy for a while racing, and I don't have to worry about him too much being available for MXGP rounds. But it's great to see him. There's a lot of conjecture about what his future holds. He's not going MXGP racing, so everybody who is super excited and all the rumor mills that's simply not going to happen. That doesn't mean he's going to be on a Kawasaki in America in 2027, but him replacing Roman Febvre, I don't believe is in the cards. But anytime that Americans want to go over and visit MXGP, I'm all for it because I think there's a lot to learn and absorb. I get to go more than any American I know. So I love to see more Americans go and see the things that I get to see, right? You get a different perspective. You get to see how other things are done versus the way we always do it. So that, to me, that was really cool. As to your Tom Vial point, I was blown away at how good Tom Vial was. I didn't expect that on a track like Arnhem. And I know he's been reasonably good. Like he was good in MX2 in the sand. I know he's capable. You could even go back to Southwick in the 250 class in America. He won that Southwick race. So there are signs that he's a very good sand rider. I just simply didn't expect it. And maybe that's on me. Maybe that's my bad to not expect it. But I have full marks to give Tom Vial. I thought it was a great day and an unexpected one from me for him at in the sand. Like, again, I will take the blame for maybe I should have expected that. He was better than I thought he would be.
Yeah, I'm just looking, and I mean, he was 4th overall in Lommel, so it's no surprise, is it? It's 3 podiums in 4 rounds now, 2nd in Czech Republic, 3rd in Sweden and the Netherlands. So on that basis, former sand race winner as well, you know what I mean? So we weren't surprised, but I just think in his rookie season, I guess we didn't expect him to beat his teammate. We didn't expect him to beat Kaiser Wolf, but the best of the rest by a long way.
Yeah, no doubt. And again, it was probably the inaccurate reaction, but it was surprise. I remember, I was sitting on the plane flying home from Budds Creek watching MXGP, and I was surprised. And maybe it wasn't so much the overall result that was as shocking as I think it was his ability to fight at the front in the early laps was more the surprise. I just saw a lot of sprint speed from him that I didn't know he had against those two, in Kai and Jeffrey in the sand.
Yeah, particularly in the second race. Well, as we said a moment ago, Jeffrey can be world champion in Turkey. He's 143 points clear of Roman Federer after Arnhem in the Netherlands. Now, if he does win that 6th title, of course, he would equal the late, great Joël Robert, who was the first to sort of even climb that summit as a 6-time world champion. And only Stefan Everts with 10, Tony Cairoli with 9 would have had more than Jeffrey. And that's that would be quite something, wouldn't it? And I think the way that we're sort of watching Jeffrey race at the moment, a lot of people are comparing him as being back to his 2018 Jeffrey Hurling self, or is he better than where he was in 2018? I would probably say, on one hand, you can say he is kind of on par, but back then he'd done he'd done everything on a KTM, hadn't he? So it was a bike and a team and everything that he was familiar with. To come into this year to win the first Grand Prix in Argentina to win both races on a Sunday, to do that at the first Grand Prix, to now be leading the championship with a possibility of winning it in Turkey with 2 rounds remaining. The fact that he's with the new team and a new whole crowd of people, you could argue that he's probably the best he's ever been on that basis. If he wins every race between now and the end of the season, he's going to be in the 20s, 22, 21, 22 wins, something like that. It's not going to be in the 30s like it was in 2018. But given the circumstances around this season, the team change, the bike change and everything, it's on par at a very, very minimum, isn't it?
I'm going to say better. I've decided. I was thinking about it while you were talking. I'm going to say better, and I'll tell you why, because that's what we're here to do. If you inserted Lucas Koenen into that 2018 championship, the way he was starting and the sprint speed he had early, it would have been very problematic for Jeffrey in that 2018 season. If you look at how Jeffrey was kind of doing things in 18, Tony Cairoli was getting the starts. Tony was building a gap a lot of the time. And then Jeffrey, at some time around halfway, would kick it into gear, reel him in, and go off about his way. I don't know that methodology would work very well against what Lucas had been doing in the first half of 2026. The reason I say Jeffrey is better is because he doesn't have any vulnerabilities right now. The starts are there, the early lap sprint speed is there, the intensity is there, and the fitness is there, where he was fantastic in 2018, but there were I remember several individual races I was thinking, there's no way he's going to win this. Like, the gap is too big, he's fallen off the back too far, he's not going to win. He doesn't even do that anymore. He doesn't allow anybody, even any air in the room in 2026, now that Lucas has exited, which is what I like better. It just feels like every angle of his racecraft is more shorn up now than maybe it was in 2018. The results can be the same, but it's how he gets there I am more confident in 2026.
Yeah. Like I say, he just keeps going from strength to strength, and I would agree with you that he's probably better than he was in 2018, certainly from a mature level. I think he also realizes that time is running out, and he can't sort of afford to lose any more time, with certain circumstances that are going to prevent him from winning the title, or any more titles. And so I think we're seeing that combined with just the desire to win, this sort of unbelievable work ethic, this You talk about people being motivated. He's in his 30s and he's still motivated. And from that side, he's very much like Tony Cairoli, very much like Stefan. Stefan was, I think, 34 when he retired from racing as a 10-time champion. And so if you've got to question anybody's motivation, to sort of do what Stefan did, to do what Tony did, you're in a losing argument against, so you're a losing argument to sort of go against anybody saying there is no motivation there for Jeffrey, because it's just, you look at his Insta profile, it's, the achievements are there, the GP races, the wins, the victories, the everything else. He's a numbers guy, and he wants to continue to be a numbers guy. And obviously a 6 as opposed to a 5. 5 leaves him with Joel Smets, with Roger DaCosta, with Tim Geiser, just to name a few. George Jobay. He doesn't want to be sat there with those other great 5-time world champions. He wants to elevate and go the next level to at least 6 with another great, Joel Robert.
He's going to win the championship. I feel very confident in that, and I'm not trying to jinx him. I believe in the form he's on right now. He's been fantastic at Turkey in the past. He's been really good in China also. We've only been to Australia once, but I have
it's
to
the
believe
only place that he's never won at.
Yeah, and I have to believe he's going to be very good in Australia also. I don't have any reason to think he's just going to suddenly fall off the pace there. But as to the motivation conversation, he's the most motivated, real estate mogul I've ever seen. The willingness and tenacity that he goes at this, because let's be real, he could never touch a dirt bike again, and his future is set, right? He could go do whatever he decides to think is fun after his racing career and not have a worry. Like guys like Ryan Villopoto, guys like Ricky Carmichael, they do what they want to do. They don't do anything that they don't feel like doing anymore. And Jeffrey has earned that right, yet here he is. He probably works harder. I'm assuming, because I don't have a way to prove it. He works harder than anybody in the sport at this age, there's no sense of urgency about proving anything to anybody, certainly not on a financial front. It's pretty remarkable. I think it's just a testament to his fabric, who he is as a person. And there's been a lot of talk over the years. People don't like the things he says. They don't like the portrayed arrogance. I think those are all fair comments to make, but you can even see it in his personality now, the maturity, the emotional maturity. He gives a lot of credit to other riders, and sometimes maybe it's tongue in cheek, but he would have never done that in years past. He would never say, hey, he is just on one right now. It's going to be really tough to deal with. He would never give credit like that. So, racing is one thing, endless respect as is deserved, but I give him a lot of respect for the growth as a person that he's become also, because it's a noticeable change. Go back to 2015, 16 and listen to the things coming out of his mouth versus 2026. It's a very, very different set of circumstances.
Or 2010, 11 or 12.
Sure. Yeah. Pick a year. I mean, it was consistent for over a decade, and that type of thing. Like him and Tony Cairoli were not fans of each other, not friends. So even later, as he was an adult, it didn't change. But certainly in the last year or two, there has been a marked change there. And I'm not saying he doesn't still feel the competitiveness, but I think he realizes I don't have to be a jerk about things to still be the best racer in the world. And I'm here for it. I really enjoy the person he is now.
All right. Well, look, let's move on to MX2. Sweden and Arnhem, of course. After Lommel, Guillaume Ferrez was 47 points clear of Sasha Kuhn, and then the qualifying race in Sweden happened. I mean, what a mess, first of all, to Guillaume Ferrez, and how he even lined up and raced the next day, stitches in his eye. He looked like he'd been just one punch with Mike Tyson, let alone 12 rounds. Impressive from both riders, actually, from Sasha Kuhn and of course from Guillaume Ferrez, because when you look at the overall results, Sasha went 1-1 on the Sunday to get his first win since his first overall and first double race win since Latvia. Ferrez went to 6-4, pulled the gap back. So Sasha pulled the gap back to 24. Like I say, it was impressive from both. Bounce back ability from Sasha Kuhn after his collarbone struggles, and after what happened on the Saturday, 24 hours earlier. Great to see not only Guillaume Ferrez line up, but also to come away with a fourth overall and keep his championship alive.
Yeah, this championship's been all over the place. Not so different than Pro Motocross in America in the 250 class. Just ups and downs, and every time you feel like you kind of have a grip on where things are going to end up. Something crazy happens, a la Guillaume's crash in Sweden. That was wild. The outcome of that, his face, I like literally like pulled back from my phone when I first saw the image, and you were the first one to send it to me.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it. So for him on that weekend, that could have been championship deciding that weekend, and the injuries he was facing, and to still put in a reasonable result said a lot about his tenacity and character. So I give him a ton of credit for being able to overcome in that moment. And now we're staring down 3 rounds where you have to think it's going to get a little nutty. I just don't think we're going to get, both of them in the top 3 all the way through. And it's, I just think we're going to get some chaos. I really do. Is it going to be on the level of Australia last year? Probably not.
Never say never.
Yeah. It's just a lot to live up to. But I do think we're going to get some craziness. I don't think there's really any love lost between Guillaume and Sasha. And all that to say, I am so impressed with Guillaume this year. I didn't see this coming. And for those that did, good on you. I just didn't. I had no idea that he would be this capable and this consistent and I mean, ready to go win his first world championship. I didn't see it coming. And now I have to rethink everything I projected for him as he, prepares himself to move up to MXGP next year. Maybe I've been wrong all along, but even if he loses it, what a year and a breakout, like a career overarching picture of Guillaume Ferrez's career. What a breakout for him, because now he's going to move on and make a lot of money in MXGP. And it seems like he's on his way to what, a successful career when there was nothing certain about that future a year or two ago.
Yeah. Liam Everts went 2-2 in Sweden. Camden McClellan 3-3. For Liam, it was his first podium since round 4 in Real Losado in the sand. And for Camden, it was his 10th podium of the season. Great performances from both those guys.
Yeah. I mean, McClellan is going to be in the championship fight sooner rather than later, right? Ferrez is leaving. Sasha Kunen's going to America, which they just announced. So for McClellan, he's got to be rubbing his hands together saying, I'm going to be in this fight, very soon. And we don't know what Simon Langenfelder's decision will be. What's he going to do? So I very much believe Camden McClellan for 2027 is one of the favorites to win this title. And his riding prowess would tell you the same thing. Like, he is certainly on form at the moment. I think the standout, or at least the surprise standout for me, has been Liam Everts. Most of this series, I've been wondering, where is Liam Everts? Why is he not near the front, right? Because I think he's capable of being there, and most of the time I'm kind of head scratching as to what's going on. Why is he not better? But then you saw it, certainly in race 2 in Arnhem. That's the guy that everybody's been expecting and waiting on and wondering where he is. It's still there. So, maybe there's more of that to come, but it's refreshing to see, right? When you see a guy who, he's certainly trying hard. You're not going to be the son of Stefan Everts and not be working hard. I promise you that. But the results haven't been coming. So good for Liam, if for nothing else, just a mental well-being for him to find some success.
Yeah, and obviously he got a race win in Arnhem, like you said, his second race win of the year. Moving on to Arnhem real quick then, just to wrap things up. Camden McClellan, is he the best sand rider in MX2 right now? Obviously he went 1-2 on Sunday. He didn't dominate like he did in Lommel, but got his third win of the season. Did the number 8, and as you said a moment ago, he's not out of the championship yet. He's only 37 off the lead now. He's only 12 behind Sasha Kunin, who's in second.
Yeah, he is the best sand rider for sure, no question about it. And it's going to be his calling card moving forward in 2027. I think he'll win those sand races, and his hard pack abilities are there. They've just been a little inconsistent at times, so I'm sure they'll work to kind of shore those things up. But as far as, is he the best sand rider on a 250 on the planet at the moment, I'll go so far as to say in any series anywhere, yeah, I have no question about that.
Yeah. Liam second overall, it was said, 4-1, back-to-back podiums since Switzerland, round 3, Riola round 4. It looks like actually the momentum is finally with Liam. And how much of that was sickness in Argentina, then the ankle injury that he picked up at the beginning of the year. And I guess with that, maybe just a dent in confidence, but it just seems this last couple of races, he seems to have been putting good, consistent results together. Like I say, back-to-back podiums, Sweden and now here. His last one, as we said, was round 4. Apart from his 12th in Lommel, where he had a DNF, he's been sort of like 4th, 5th most most races. So he's had consistency, but I'm guessing if you're Liam, if you're Rasmus, if you're, the team owner at the Stan, of course, Kai Hennekens, you just wanted that consistency to be battle inside the top three.
Yeah, and it's not so much the number on paper, it's kind of the optics of it, right? He was detached from the lead group. He really wasn't relevant in the race winning conversation. So you can get fourth or fifth, and how the fourth or fifth is derived can be wildly different, right? You can be an also ran, not even in the conversation. Half the paddock doesn't even know what place you got because you were nowhere near the front. Or you can be in the fight and you can get fourth and you'd be like, man, you rode incredibly well. It just, you were on the short end of the stick as far as that battle. It felt like the former, where he just wasn't in the conversation. There wasn't a lot of Liam Everts talk for weeks. This is a much different conversation now. Yeah. He's in the fight. He's at the front. He's relevant. Results be damned. I don't care what place he gets, but him showing that he can run the pace at the front and be in the fight is really, really important for sentiment and all those things. When you come back to the truck, how does everybody view you as, like what's the mood around your racecraft and all those things? It's really important for racers, like in their self-esteem and confidence and just good feelings moving forward.
And obviously Guillaume Perez, 1 week after that crash, he was fourth overall in Sweden. He went 3-3 in Arnhem, put up a fight as well. There was some great fight on track with him and Sasha, the top two in the championship. They went toe to toe in, I think it was the second race when Sasha found his way around the outside and then almost crashed with Guillaume.
Sasha almost crashed? No.
But yeah, third overall. And now obviously going into the final 3 rounds, he goes into Turkey 25 points clear, which is he's managed to get it to that one race sort of clearance. Overall, on the whole, a good solid weekend for Guillaume before we talk about Sasha real quick.
Yeah, Guillaume's been phenomenal. Again, the ability to overcome that adversity and the resilience he showed in Sweden, and then, to be basically to tie, or maybe he gained one in points on Sasha in the sand at Arnhem, I think was huge, because if you're Sasha, you're gaming out, how am I going to close the gap down? And I think he looked at Arnhem as a real chance, because that's not typically been Guillaume's strength. It's not a liability so much anymore, but it's not his strength. And for Guillaume to go in and hold serve, basically not allow anything given back, I think was a huge moment for Guillaume moving forward, because now Turkey hardpack, China kind of in between, Australia more clay-based. He doesn't have that real liability or anything to really worry about. It's going to be kind of more on an even playing field for the last 3, and he has the 25-point edge.
Yeah, and you'd rather be 25 points up at this point than chasing 25 points. And as for Sasha Kunin, yeah, busy weekend for him, especially that second race. But great to see the fighting spirit between him and Guillaume. It just goes to show how much both riders want it. They may both never get this opportunity again to be crowned world champion, and it's great to see that they are putting everything on the line, even their bodies almost, in certain circumstances.
But you can't try harder than Sasha Kunin tries. It's impossible. There is never, ever a question about effort. I would say maybe even too much. Like if there's anything you would say, he kind of overrides situations. He's trying too hard, but you can't fault someone for having too much heart or wanting it too much. And it is so apparent in his riding, and that's a bigger picture conversation. Like if you watch Kevin Windham, and he's a perfect example, you wondered at times, is he even trying? Is he really giving his best effort right now? And he was. It's just how it looked. Like it wasn't apparent in his form because he was so silky smooth. With Sasha, there's none of that. It's all just, a curse word and elbows, right? It's just everything you've got all the time, flat out, leave nothing in the tank. And leaving nothing in the tank, I wonder in that race too, if he just pushed a little bit too much, right? Did he give a little bit too much early on in race 1 and early in race 2 that left him a little flat at the end, because he definitely left some points on the table there. And I don't know, time will tell. Do those points matter when we get to Australia? But it felt like there was an opportunity left there, because he just basically ran out of gas late in race 2 because he was so erratic. Like you cannot push like that for 35 minutes the way he was. And I don't blame him for going for race wins, but he was on the edge in Arnhem.
Yeah. Well, as for Triumph, in a third year in terms of, it is a third year in their project, isn't it? 22 podiums, 11 each now from Guillaume and from Camden. 8 wins of the season. We've had 16 rounds. So that's a 50% strike rate in Grand Prix victories. It's not bad going, is it, for the British manufacturer?
No, incredible effort by them. And I did want to ask you, I was surprised by this, so maybe I'm projecting, but I'm going to ask you anyway. Were you surprised to see Guillaume sign that MXGP deal with Triumph? Because I very much thought he was going to be on Kawasaki MXGP moving forward. I really thought
I think they were just mixed. Yeah, there were mixed rumors, actually. Everybody thought it was a done deal. And my own thoughts were, why, if you're Triumph, would you let, if Guillaume wins a championship, first of all, why would you let a world champion go to the competition when you've got a 450 Triumph that is there ready to be sort of raced and ridden in 2027? It didn't make sense to me. So I just wonder how much of that was just noise, because, sometimes these riders and managers can be a little bit shrewd. They can enter discussions and, you can sort of get so far down the line, you can maybe agree but not shake on it, let's say, and not put pen to paper. So until the contracts come through, you could then be in a situation, go, right, let's just have one ditch with, where you're at and just go, look, this is what they're willing to pay. And it's probably not just Kawasaki. There was probably others in the hunt as well. But let's say Kawasaki, because that was the loudest rumor. These guys are prepared to pay this. Are you prepared to match it or not? And you can say all you want how happy you are with the team, the personnel, and everything else. And from the outside, with him, with Guillaume, with everybody, with Clement, with everybody from top to bottom in that team, the background staff, everybody, there is a good camaraderie there. And why would you want to sort of, as a rider, even sort of change that? So it didn't make sense. So I just think some of it was maybe a little bit of gamesmanship in how far can we push this and whatever else. And it may have been that even if Triumph came to somewhere close to the Kawasaki offer, he probably would have stayed anyway, just because of that familiarity that he's had this last couple of years.
Yeah. So from what I kind of was asking around, trying to get more info, and I did ascertain that Guillaume was asking around about the Cowie situation. Should I? Shouldn't I? What are the pitfalls? What are the advantages if I go there? So I do very much believe that it was a serious thought for him. Like, I think he was very much entertaining this offer from Kawasaki. The reason I thought he was going to do it is I didn't think that Triumph would be willing to, for me to say able to is not fair. I have no idea what their financial situation is. I didn't think they'd be willing to make an offer on par with what I was told the Kawasaki offer was, which was substantial for multiple years. I didn't know that Triumph was willing to get close to that, which clearly they were, so kudos to them. I thought that would be the deciding factor. Is Triumph is still in the building phase, right? They're still incorporating bikes into America. They're still, they're not, I'm sure they're not selling a lot of 450s quite yet. They're entering that arena, growing. I just didn't know they would get that serious on a financial responsibility level to be able to retain Guillaume. That's what I thought would be the difference. So however that came to be, good on everybody. It just caught me by surprise. I was like, really? Wow. I did. Because once I heard the number that Kawasaki was rumored to be throwing out, I'm like, well, that's going to do it. Guillaume's going to take that because that is substantial and you're not going to get offers like that very often. In the end, I was just dead wrong. So yeah, I think a lot of the things you said about the camaraderie, him wanting to be there, probably in the end weighed out. That was probably the difference maker.
And don't believe everything you hear, because on Friday afternoon in Red Bull Ducati, there was a bit of a gathering, a journalistic gathering. So there was an unofficial press conference, not in the media center, but under their tent.
Yep.
Paolo Ciabatti and Louis Vosters. And obviously they just agreed terms to sort of say that, this collaboration with Louis Vosters and Ducati will go until the end of 2029. And then obviously Louis made a speech in terms of, how great their relationship is and how they sort of butt heads occasionally as well, because, they both say what they feel. Paolo Ciabatti kind of came back on and basically said, oh, and by the way, don't believe everything you hear, because we've heard some stupid rumors going around that, Roman has joined us for this much money. We want to put that rumor to bed. He hasn't. His fee is on par with somebody of his stature, and his position is where it should be, and everything else. And, but there were people talking, there were this many millions of reasons why he's joined and whatever else. But, the media who had been, widely reporting, this or discussing it in the paddock or whatever else, were basically saying, no, that's not true. Obviously, they don't have to divulge that information, but they just said it's not the number that everybody was sort of being batting around, So great for them for standing their ground, and great actually for Paolo Ciabatti to sort of say, everyone's talking about, one of the questions was, why didn't you wait? Why did you just come straight out and go, Roman is going to be with Ducati next year, and everybody's announced it? And he said, well, because in MotoGP, that's how it works. As soon as everybody knows, he said, because when everybody knows in the paddock, why are we delaying everything, especially when the rumor is true? So, we basically said, look, this is a situation. So Kawasaki put out their PR, say thank you and everything else. And then we put out ours, same day or next day going, welcome to the team. And that's it. And he says, even if there are some issues, like he's got a different drink sponsor at the moment, there are ways around that in the short term, until he becomes, until we get to 2027. So, it was quite a refreshing outlook in terms of, how they dealt with a lot of things within that, and sort of the complexities of bringing Roman into the team.
I hope that becomes the norm. It would be a welcome change for, the sport of motocross and supercross. I don't know that it's coming. Like the conversations I've had with PR departments at other OEMs, they wanted nothing to do with anything like that, right? They want every ounce of marketing, every, piece they can possibly get until that contract is in expiry. I would love for that to become the norm. And maybe this is the first change that signals everybody should make a change. I certainly hope that's true. I never, for me to think that Ducati was going to overpay by a significant amount didn't make any sense for me, because from the jump, they have said, we're not ready to spend crazy amounts of money yet. We don't sell enough motorcycles. This needs to sustain itself on an off-road front before we can ever think about doing. So I kind of dismissed that right away. To pay him on par of what he's worth, sure, that makes sense. But to overpay him, to go above and beyond of some crazy number, I don't think they would have any interest in paying anybody to do that, let alone Roman Febvre at 35 years old.
Yeah, exactly. And that kind of makes me think then, when you listen to that, the one thing that was frustrating for all of us, I think, given how the season started, was like everybody knew last year that Jeffrey was going to Honda. Everybody knew that Tim was going to Yamaha. Nobody could say anything. Obviously, the bench racers and other outlets were sort of speculating and putting the stuff out there anyway. But obviously, no one official was saying anything. And obviously, we didn't see Jeffrey until January 1st, with the PR and on the bike straight away. We saw Tim. I think the PR came out, and then obviously we saw Tim on the bike a couple of 3 weeks later. That's the one thing for me as well, given the fact that the last GP is normally end of September, the Nations is the beginning of October. Why are we in an age where contracts are still December 31st? Why don't they end, let's say, October, at the end of October, just in case there's any one or two extra little races, you just never know. Because when you think about marketability and things like that, if your contract is done, then you're going to be, let's say, Romain Febvre, obviously Ducati next year. When they have the Milan EICMA show, the big trade fair, Ducati want to make the most of that in November when that show happens, and go, by the way, this is where all the announcements are made and all the sponsors are on board and whatever else. If Romain Febvre wins a championship this year, obviously he's not going to. Yes, you understand that Kawasaki want to maximize that as well at EICMA. But what good is that going, here's our world champion who is actually not going to be with us next year?
Sure.
It doesn't make sense.
You want to push it forward on a marketing front,
so you just
behind you.
Exploit it for the next 3-4 weeks that you've got in October, maximize that push, and then move on. But I don't know. I'm just waiting to see when. It would just be nice to know that, some of these guys actually thinking going forward, especially, looking at contracts, don't get themselves into those December 31st contracts, because at the end of the day, it doesn't really make it, November the 1st to October 31st, October, whatever, you know what I mean? That's still a 12-month contract.
Well, and the last thing I'll add to it is, you remember as well as I do, and hopefully I'll get to join you again at Paris last year, how concerned Jeffrey was about making sure that he had Red Bull KTM livery and didn't say anything or, infer anything about him not being on a Red Bull KTM for the next 45 days, right? It told you everything you need to know about the state of things in our sport right now, that he was that concerned when everybody knew. This is mid-November. Everybody knew but he had to make sure that nothing was pictured wrong, phrased wrong, stated wrong, because he didn't want to suffer any consequences that may come from it.
Exactly. Well, look, we are out of time, but JT, thank you for joining us again. Of course, Jason Thomas, Fly Racing. We've got a free weekend off this weekend, so everyone's going to be tuning in to the final round of AMA Pro Motocross, I'm sure, in Ironman. But we will resume on MXGP-TV, and that will be Turkey. The MXGP of Turkey, 5th and 6th September, and that starts the run of 3 where we go directly to Shanghai for China, and then we go also to Darwin, right up there in the Northern Territory in Australia. So the final 3 races, they're all flyaways, including this first one here, because all the bikes have left. They're already freighted out to Turkey. So yeah, three races to go for us, 1 for you, plus obviously SMX. I'm just contemplating real quick, if Jeffrey wins the championship in Turkey, do you want to do another one of these, time schedules permitting, next week?
Absolutely.
Or would you rather wait until after Australia?
No, you don't have to twist my arm to be involved in this podcast. So let's do it. I think it will give us a chance to kind of give Jeffrey his flowers on a championship well earned. So we'll have plenty of opportunities between the next 3 rounds, and then Motocross of Nations, which I'll be joining you in France in a little over a month's time.
Okay, well, we'll do that then. We'll put that as a must do. Clear the diary, get it done. If we are in the situation where Jeffrey is a 6-time world champion after Turkey. So hope you've enjoyed this one. We had a lot to get through, even though we had less rounds to get through than we did on the previous podcast. But it was a fascinating couple of rounds in Sweden and in Arnhem at the Netherlands. We get to do it again for the final 3 rounds. So from me, Paul Malin, from Jason Thomas, Fly Racing, thank you. And once again, thank you to FMF Racing as well for their support of this podcast. So that's it. Enjoy your weekend, JT. I'm on the fence at the moment. Is it going to be Hunter? Is it going to be Jet? Is it going to be Cole or Levi? I'm just going to watch with intent, and knowing that I haven't got to go to work the next day, as we do when we watch from the hotel room on a Saturday night this side of the world.
Well, you're gonna suffer enough the next 3 weekends after that, so it'll be a well-earned weekend off this time.
Absolutely, and that's exactly what it's going to be. Well, so anyway, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye for now.
MXGP, the podcast.